Hello guys, what's up? This time around, we're gonna go through a little exercise that I give to my students at SAE Jakarta. This is one of those practice that I give to them when we're covering the sound design process using Ableton Live. I asked them to create like a loop of a song using entirely synthesizer coming with Ableton Live 9. So in this particular exercise, I asked them to only use operator and analog, no audio sample whatsoever. Building a whole song using only operator and analog. So this way, the students are required to create their own patches from scratch. No presets whatsoever. That's what we're gonna do right now. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that I usually do is I create a kick drum when I want to make a track. For a kick, usually I use two synthesizer to stack it up. I mean, you can do one if you can make one that's like fat enough, but I like to do two. I usually use analog for like the meat of the kick, and then I use operator for like the transient of it. So let's do that. Let's do the meat part of the kick. Here we have a analog. So when we open analog, that's the first sound that we have, which is like a both oscillator active, and then by default they choose a saw wave for it. For a kick, we only need one oscillator, so let's turn off the oscillator one, and we switch to the sine wave for a kick. That's the sound that you get. That's a pure sine wave. Still quite sustained. So let's go to the amp and bring the sustain all the way down. Now you almost got like a kick. Later on we'll adjust this to our taste, but for now, the longer they are, it's gonna be like that. So, and then let's go back to your oscillator one. With the kick, to get the transient, we need to do like a pitch envelope. So that's what we're doing right now. Usually I start with just like pitch envelope initial. I go all the way to 100%. And that's what you get if you do that. It's gonna be like a laser sound. If you want to make a laser sound, this is basically all you have to do. But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a kick. So what we do is we gotta shorten the time. It's like that, but as for now, it's a bit too clicky. So usually what I do is I'll bring it down. There you go. That sounds more like a kick. So there you go. That you got the meat of the kick. The length of this we can adjust it later on. If we want to make something that's more like 808, we go with a longer decay. But if we want to like make something that's more like a 909 or something, you go with the shorter decay. By the way, what I'm trying to make right now is like something more around a housey kind of tune. So let's go with this kind of kick for now. So let's don't forget to rename that so we don't get confused later on. Kick one. And then let's go to the next. Let's create the other part of the kick from operator. By default, that's a sine wave on operator on your A oscillator. And same thing with the other one. We take the sustain down. In this particular one, we're only looking for the transient, so we don't need a long decay. So that should be good enough. Go to pitch envelope again. Go all the way 100%. And that's what you have. So we play it together, shall we? Okay, let's backtrack to the previous one. and let's make a beat out of it. So let's do that. Let's quantize these. I'm using push, by the way, so I'm just going to enable the record quantize on. We can record that again, or we can just move it here. So it's copying the same pattern. So let's rename that to kick, click. So if we play that, sometime when we do this, I already got like quite a decent transient. So it's your call. We can go without it. I kind of like that transient better. So we can go back to these and shorten this. That's quite better. So usually what I do, next thing is I'll throw in some compressor, but this is all up to your own preference, you know. I like to throw in a compressor in the beginning. And when we listen to it, this is a bit, you can hear the tune, so you can hear like some frequency clashing in there in a way. You can see. So let's bring in some compressor too in this one. And let's EQ it a little bit because probably there's a lower end frequency that's clashing there. So what I like to do with this kick is I group him and then let's rename that, and then I throw in like another compressor to just glue them together. There's a glue compressor here, just like the name says. So that's your kick right there. Of course, we're leaving it as it is for now. We're gonna go back to it and adjust it when we have like the rest of the track together. So the next thing we do is let's make snare. Snare, I like to use operator. So let's just do that. Snare is actually very similar with kick, the way you make it. You know, you start out with the sine wave too. But you know the difference between snare and kick, you know, kick is happening in a lot lower frequency while snare is a little bit higher. Usually like, you know, you peak at around 200 hertz while kick would be in about 80 to 100 range. So if you do this, I mean you can tune it down, or you can tune it up, or you just play higher, which that's what I usually do. So same way. So you get that sound, which is not what you're looking for actually. And then you go to pitch envelope. And then here you can play with the decay. Now it sounds more like a tom, but don't worry about it, because this is still one character about snare is it has the cracking sound. It's like there's a bright side thing. Usually what we do is we put another layer of white noise to have that cracking sound. So we go to oscillator 2 right here, and we go to noise. There are two noise here. There's a noise loop and noise white. Noise white is fine, but the problem is we have no control over it. So like, let's say I do this. We have no control on like how to shape it or anything. So instead we go with the noise loop. It sounds a bit dull right now, but in this, when we go up to about 4, it'll brighten it up. See, the thing is with the snare right now, when you play this thing together, the two oscillators is playing on top of each other. The sine is in the bottom and then the white noise on top of it. So we can switch that so that it plays together at the same time, in the same plane by clicking this, and you go to the right. See, that's your vertical setting right now. As you see, it's stacking on top of each other. That's your first oscillator, second, third, and fourth, and so on. And then you go here, that's horizontal. See, now it sounds a bit more interesting. What you can do now is you go back to your oscillator, because right now we do this. The white noise is on a sustain mode. So we go to the envelope and then we want to kill the sustain. And now we have our basic snare. The next thing I would do is EQ it, because it kind of has a frequency. You shorten the thing, and now this starts to sound like a 808 snare. See, that's how you make an 808 snare. Next thing you do is you compress them after you EQ it. It still has that note tone. Now you can adjust this to see. Snare, you don't want it to be dry like this, so let's drop a reverb. There you go. Now you got your new wave snare, but that's not what we're looking for. We need like a much tighter reverb, so let's go in a smaller size, and then we go with a high. Let's try to put some beat there. Keep in mind that we're gonna come back to that later on to make some more adjustment, to make everything sounds more fit. But for now, you get your snare to begin with, and then what shall we do? Maybe we should put a hi-hats, maybe? Okay. With hi-hats, this one's basically pretty simple. You can go with the operator or you can go with the analog. It really doesn't matter. For this purpose, let's go with the analog, maybe. Okay, let's do this. And once again, turn off all the oscillator 1, oscillator 2. We go with noise because that's what we want. So that's your basic white noise. It's a bit too low now, so let's go. That sounds more like it. So we kill the sustain again. Shorten the And this starts to sound like hi-hats. It's that simple. That's how you make hi-hats. And then you can do the tone by changing. Let's put some beat there. There you go. That's your basic house beat using strictly synthesizer for now. So let's add a little bit of reverb. You know, I already put a reverb in there, just your default setting reverb. So I'd go with high. This is on the, what do you call that? It's a return track. And that's where you send it. So let's play. Don't forget to low cut that. Let's add a little bit of delay. You don't have to do this, but I like to do this to make sure that I don't have any like renegade frequency. So usually what I do is I EQ all the low end. So now we got that. So what's the next thing we should do? Maybe we should make a bassline. For bassline, I go with analog because that's basically your basic analog or subtractive synthesizing, and it's pretty easy way to get around it now. It's your default sound. It's two oscillator on with saw wave. So what we're gonna do is let's keep the saw on the first oscillator and let's go with the sine because we want to get that. And let's bring the octave down by one. Oh, you know what? Maybe we don't need that. If we look down here, there's the F1, F2, F1, F2. That's where you assign what filter these oscillator are going to, and right now it's assigned to filter 1 and filter 1 right here. So both oscillator are being routed from this to here and this to here. So now we have full control with just one filter. So let's try to get what we want. Man. If you want to make it sounds more plucky, the key to like pluck sound is this, you know, you kill the sustain and then decays, but that's still so. Now that we got that going, so let's try to do that. So let's do that real quick. See, this is starting to sound like a pretty decent track. So you got your bass line right there. Of course, we'll go back again to it later to make it more better. And then what do we need next? Maybe we need like a little bit of like a bleepy sound for towards like the higher frequency. Let's go with this. So what I did was I go with a triangle and a square together. Still same reason. Let's do that. Yeah, I'm not the best keyboard player, so sometimes I have to do things like this. So let's simplify this to clean it up. And then maybe the next thing what we want to do is create something like a pad. Okay, with the pad is very similar, so let's go with that. Let's name it bleepy because that's how it sounds like. Now we go to this and let's create a pad. It's pad-like, not necessarily a pad. Let's go with 2 stack of saw. So what we do now to make it wider, because pad's character is pretty wide, they're very wide and it's very, you don't really hear attack. So that's the first thing that we got to do, and they're not bright at all, because they're supposed to be sitting in the background. So what we're doing now is we want to detune the 2 saw wave. So by detuning it, you're kind of like shifting things to the left and to the right a little bit. Well, that's not necessarily to the left or to the right, but by shifting things become wider. So let's do that. Oh yeah, when you detune, you don't want to go all the way here, because that's when and here go all the way 3, because that's gonna start affecting the pitch. Like you press a C, then it's not gonna be C. So try to be like really, really moderate on that one. Usually what I do is I don't really go that far. And what you do with detuning, usually this is what I do, is if I go, let's say in here it's 0.09, then what I do in the second one, it'll be minus 0.09. So it's like the exact opposite of it. So if you listen to it, it's a big difference. Now you can hear thing a little bit wider. The next thing we want to do is vibrato. We don't have to do this, but it gives it a little bit more life to it. And then unison, this is you detune it even more. But just like the other one, be moderate about it. See, that sounds a lot wider. And then the next thing we do is we go to the amp, just like I said earlier, how they don't have like a quick attack, for the pad. So what we do is we go to attack, and then we just then we can lower the and then usually what I do is on the release it's a bit longer, so when I let go you can still hear a tail end. But you know, this character is very bright. We want to dull it up, so. Yeah, keep in mind that this sounds very terrible when you're like, listening to it on its own. So the next thing that I do usually, because we're trying to make a pad, is I just add a chorus in there to make it even more. Yes, this preset chorus works really well. And then the next thing I do is add some reverb. With longer decay. So there's your pads. So let's try to make something here. So there you go. That's it. That's your basic pad. So basically, we've just made like an entire track just using two synthesizers. So now the next thing is let's play around with this. Usually what I do with kick is I like to add a little bit more saturation. So let's do that. Add a little bit drive. Now this is when we start making like all the adjustment that we need, And then on the snare could use a little bit more brightness, so you can go with that same EQ. So what I like to do is I add a little bit of saturation. So let's bring this up. Let's bring some saturation in there. Right here. if you think about it, let's see what you do. That's your snare. That's without the EQ and without the saturation. Just the EQ. Big difference. A lot more crunchy, so there you go. And that's our snare. Notice if I go with the noise and then there is no pitch information because there are no pitch on the noise. So that's why you have. So basically, we only have control. What I like to do with this is at the end of the chain, I add a little bit of a side chain with the kick. See, the only reason why we do that is just to give it a little bit more space for the kick, you know, so. And last but not least, usually I just put a EQ here just to roll off basically anything below 60 Hertz. It's a good practice to do this on every channel. So and this one is see, always name your track right away because this is gonna drive you insane. So let's do this. So there you go, guys. That's basically creating a track just using operator and analog. We're just scratching the surface here. I mean, we could go back to each of this track and tweak some more, adding more effect and etc. But for now, I mean, this is just a starter, so you guys should try it. This is a good practice. It's a good way to force yourself to be disciplined at designing a sound patch. Because honestly, one of the reasons why I always emphasize on like creating your own patch on the synthesizer is because you work a lot faster, you know, like instead of, I mean, yes, using sample is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using samples. But if you're using samples, you know, what's usually happened with me when I use sample is like, I had an idea of a song, I had an idea for a certain sound, and then when I'm relying on preset, I will have my set synthesizer, and then I'm going to sit through all this preset one by one, trying it out. And you know, if you lucked out, maybe within like your like first 10 try, and you get exactly what you want. But there are times when like, you know, you sit there for like 15-20 minutes just going through all those patches to see, you know, if there are any preset in there that's like exactly what you want, you know. And by the time you think you find what you want, that's like already like what, 20 minutes later. And usually what happened to me is like that's it, man. All the creative flow is gone. By the time I got the patches, I get to the point where like, what was I trying to do earlier? So and if you look at it this way, that was like what, 20 minutes. It took me 20 minutes just to put together something real quick because I know exactly what I want. I want to make a kick. Oh, let's do it that way. Oh, I want to make a bleepy sound. I kind of know what kind of character I want, so I can make it from scratch, and that's exactly what I want. Same thing with the pad. So yeah, uh, you know, um, that's it for today. But yeah, you guys should try it out. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.